Zola, do you ever think about what Africa would look like in the next 50 or 100 years?
Africa? What's there to think about Africa? I mean, I'm yet to figure out my life, not to talk of almighty Africa. Anyway, why do you ask?
Well, given the situation of Africa in the past, and I wonder if things would get better by then. You know, I read in the news that in some parts of Africa, people don't even have access to good schools, proper healthcare, and even basic amenities everyone should have.
50 years is a long time, but I believe things will be better then.
Me too. You know, sometimes I just wish I had the power to change things.
As African youth, we have the power to create the Africa we want.
My goods have been there for over 5 months. I haven't been able to trade because they've shut down the borders.
Wow, Charlie, you are still worried about your goods. My business has been shut down because of inadequate power supply. I wonder when we'll have steady power supply in this part of Africa, eh?
I wonder too. It's just so annoying.
We desire and demand an Africa that is peaceful and secure. An Africa where young and old, men and women, girls and boys from all walks of life are united in their diversity. An Africa whose growth and development are sustainable and inclusive, benefiting and bringing prosperity to all its citizens. An integrated continent, politically united, based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Renaissance. An Africa where good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law are the guiding principles of our societies. This is an Africa where we are confident in our identity, heritage, and culture, and shared values. A very thriving Africa where young people contribute at all levels of society. And ultimately, an Africa which is an influential global player responsible for managing her resources and financing her peace and development. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063.
Zola, do you ever think about what Africa would look like in the next 50 or 100 years?
Africa? What's there to think about Africa? I mean, I'm yet to figure out my life, not to talk of almighty Africa. Anyway, why do you ask?
Well, given the situation of Africa in the past, and I wonder if things would get better by then. You know, I read in the news that in some parts of Africa, people don't even have access to good schools, proper healthcare, and even basic amenities everyone should have.
50 years is a long time, but I believe things will be better then.
Me too. You know, sometimes I just wish I had the power to change things.
As African youth, we have the power to create the Africa we want.
My goods have been there for over 5 months. I haven't been able to trade because they've shut down the borders.
Wow, Charlie, you are still worried about your goods. My business has been shut down because of inadequate power supply. I wonder when we'll have steady power supply in this part of Africa, eh?
I wonder too. It's just so annoying.
We desire and demand an Africa that is peaceful and secure. An Africa where young and old, men and women, girls and boys from all walks of life are united in their diversity. An Africa whose growth and development are sustainable and inclusive, benefiting and bringing prosperity to all its citizens. An integrated continent, politically united, based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. An Africa where good governance, democracy, Respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law are the guiding principles of our societies. This is an Africa where we are confident in our identity, heritage, and culture, and shared values. Our very thriving Africa where young people contribute at all levels of society. And ultimately, an Africa which is an influential global player responsible for managing her resources and financing her peace and development. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063.
Zola, do you ever think about what Africa would look like in the next 50 or 100 years?
Imagine a continent filled with limitless possibilities, where every African can realize their full potential. With the implementation of the continent-wide transformative flagship project of Agenda 2063, we can achieve this goal. An integrated high-speed train network that connects African countries so that we can travel and transport goods with ease across the continent. A continental strategy for Africa's commodities that ensures a collaborative process in developing and managing the continent's natural resources for all Africans. The world's largest trading zone in the African Continental Free Trade Area, which promotes trade within Africa and with the world. The African passport and the removal of restrictions through the free movement of persons, allowing Africans to travel, work, conduct business, and live anywhere within their continent. A peaceful Africa where all guns are silenced. The Grand Inga Dam project will provide affordable and clean electricity. Improved and affordable air travel through a single African air transport market, SAATM, that connects African cities. An annual African Economic Forum that brings together great African minds to develop strategies to harness the continent's vast resources to the benefit of Africans. The establishment of the African financial institutions that promote economic integration and the transparent mobilization of resources to promote economic development. African Museum will preserve and promote our cultural heritage and celebrate Africa's influence on the cultures of the world. Promoting cybersecurity that protects our data so there is safety online and ensures that emerging technologies are used for the benefit of Africans. An African virtual and e-university that provides access to the highest quality tertiary and continuing education to Africans anywhere in the world. A Pan-African e-network for innovative e-applications and services that will transform Africa into an e-society. An African outer space strategy that bolsters economic development across all sectors and positions Africa as a regional market for space products and services. And the Encyclopedia Africana, which will document and celebrate Africa's history, culture, and the contributions of African people throughout the world. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Imagine a continent filled with limitless possibilities, where every African can realize their full potential. With the implementation of the continent-wide transformative flagship project of Agenda 2063, we can achieve this goal. An integrated high-speed train network that connects African countries so that we can travel and transport goods with ease across the continent. A continental strategy for Africa's commodities that ensures a collaborative process in developing and managing the continent's natural resources for all Africans. The world's largest trading zone in the African Continental Free Trade Area, which promotes trade within Africa and with the world. The African passport and the removal of restrictions through the free movement of persons, allowing Africans to travel, work, conduct business, and live anywhere within their continent. A peaceful Africa where all guns are silenced. The Grand Inga Dam project will provide affordable and clean electricity, improved and affordable air travel through a single African air transport market, SAATM, that connects African cities. An annual African Economic Forum that brings together great African minds to develop strategies to harness the continent's vast resources to the benefit of Africans. The establishment of the African financial institutions that promote economic integration and the transparent mobilization of resources to promote economic development. The Great African Museum will preserve and promote our cultural heritage and celebrate Africa's influence on the cultures of the world. Promoting cybersecurity that protects our data so there is safety online and ensures that emerging technologies are used for the benefit of Africans. An African virtual and e-university that provides access to the highest quality tertiary and continuing education to Africans anywhere in the world. A Pan-African e-network for innovative e-applications and services that will transform Africa into an e-society. An African outer space strategy that bolsters economic development across all sectors and positions Africa as a regional market for space products and services. And the Encyclopedia Africana, which will document and celebrate Africa's history, culture, and the contributions of African people throughout the world. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Imagine a continent filled with limitless possibilities, where every African can realize their full potential. With the implementation of the continent-wide transformative flagship project of
Every African has a right to proper health care, good food and nutrition, and good quality of life. African countries, in the implementation of their national priorities under Agenda 2063, have made commitments to eradicate poverty in our generation, build inclusive and sustainable economies with shared prosperity for all, through social and economic transformation by focusing on the following areas. Sustainable and inclusive economic growth that reduces poverty and leads to increased income levels. Equality and decent jobs. Value addition in agricultural products and growth of agro-business and industries. Human capital development. Skills revolution in science, technology and innovation. Gender development, youth empowerment and employment generation for youth and women. Social security and protection for all people and infrastructural development. Good governance supported by capable institutions. Manufacturing-based industrialization. Promotion of culture, arts and sports. Peace and security. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Every African has a right to proper health care, good food and nutrition, and good quality of life. African countries, in the implementation of their national priorities under Agenda 2063, have made commitments to eradicate poverty in our generation, build inclusive and sustainable economies with shared prosperity for all, through social and economic transformation by focusing on the following areas. Sustainable and inclusive economic growth that reduces poverty and leads to increased income levels. Equality and decent jobs. Value addition in agricultural products and growth of agro-business and industries. Human capital development. Skills revolution in science, technology and innovation. gender development, youth empowerment and employment generation for youth and women, social security and protection for all people and infrastructural development, good governance supported by capable institutions.
To conduct the session.
May I kindly request upon all of us to rise for the anthems, please. Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. Zahir Dhul Kamal, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Union of Comoros and the Chairperson of the Executive Council, Excellency Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua, Cabinet Secretary, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers of Foreign Affairs of African Union member states and heads of delegations of respective AU member states, Your Excellency Dr. Monique Nsanza Baganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies Commissioners at the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Mr. Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Qattan, Advisor at the Royal Court, former Minister of State of Africa, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Excellency Mr. Antonio Pedro, the Acting Executive Secretary of UNCA, Excellencies Ambassadors, members of Permanent Representatives Committee, heads of African organs, heads of African Union organs, heads of regional economic communities, members of diplomatic corps, members of the press, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It is of my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the opening ceremony of the 43rd Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union, which is being held today, the 13th of July, 2023, here in Nairobi, warmly known as the Green City in the Sun, in the beautiful Republic of Kenya. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the task of the Executive Council is of enormous importance as one of the key policy organs of the Union. This 43rd ordinary session of the Executive Council is being convened preceding the 5th mid-year coordination meeting of the African Union, regional economic communities, and regional mechanisms, which will be held on 16th of July 2023 under the AU theme of the year, Acceleration of African Continental Free Trade Area Implementation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, having said so, allow me to detail the program for today. Opening ceremony, which stands as follows. We will have the welcoming remarks by His Excellency Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya. We shall then have a statement by Her Excellency Dr. Monique Sanza Baganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Musa Faki Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Following which, we will have a statement by Mr. Antonio Pedro, Acting Executive Secretary of United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, followed by a statement by His Excellency Mr. Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Qattan, Advisor at the Royal Court and former Minister for Africa, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And last but not least, we will have the opening statement by His Excellency Mr. Zahir Dhul Kamal, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Union of Comoros and the Chairperson of the Executive Council. Finally, as per usual practice, we will have the official group photo of the session. Without any further ado, I now have the honor to request His Excellency Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya, to deliver his welcoming remarks. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Good morning. Your Excellency, Mr. Dohir Dul Kamal, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in charge of Diaspora and Francophonie of the Union of Comoros and the Chairperson of the Executive Council, Excellency Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Excellency Ministers of different portfolios, Excellency Representative of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Qattan, our special guest from the great country, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Excellencies, permanent representatives of the African Union, commissioners of the African Union Commission, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and just in case I left somebody out, all protocols observed. It is with great honor and privilege to address this august meeting on the occasion of the 43rd Ordinary Session of the Executive Council. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Kenya to welcome you to our beautiful city of Nairobi. Kenya is immensely honored to be hosting this year's Executive Council meeting. Karibu, welcome, bienvenue, bienvenido, marhaban. Mr. Chairperson, our meeting here in Nairobi could not have come at an opportune time like this during the running theme of the year 2023, year of the AfCFTA, Acceleration of the African Continental Free Trade Implementation. And our continent remains well endowed with resources both beneath and above the ground. The sad thing is that despite all these resources, millions of our people continue to suffer in poverty, disease, food insecurity, and instability. Millions of young people do not have access to education, and the educated cannot find job opportunities within their borders. Our continent is rich in renewable energy resources. The world's mineral resources, arable land, diverse flora and fauna, and above all, a youthful population. Yet for a long time, we have always been characterized as a poor continent. But I'd like to tell you, my friends, we are not a poor continent. But for us to be recognized for who we really are, we need to unlock our collective socio-economic potential. And it is critical that we accelerate our integration and create synergies and build our comparative advantages that allows us to freely trade with each other. We have to consolidate our markets and trade more with each other and allow free movement of people across borders. My brothers and sisters, I think let us be a bit realistic about what is going on in the world today. Many years ago, in Berlin, Europeans sat down and subdivided our continent, at times separating a brother from our sister. After they finished doing that and colonizing us, they went ahead and taught us to fear, hate, and keep away from each other. So you are my neighbor, but I fear you, and I don't want to mingle with you. Let me give you an example and use a few African examples. Today, it is easier for a European to travel within Europe without requirement of a visa. They can trade, make money, visit each other, spend money, and the European Union area, and they're making a lot of money, they're becoming rich and rich every day. In Africa, our former colonies and what they taught us still prevails. Then they mingle among each other. Today in Africa, the reality is that for an African to visit a European nation, an ordinary African, to visit a European nation, is like, let me give you an example my teacher used to use. It's like trying to milk an elephant because of the visa process. However, for a European to visit an African nation, most of our nations, it is like a walk on the beach. It's like going to have a cup of tea. But then that is not the problem. The tragedy is that now for an African to visit a fellow African within the African Union, the visa restrictions in many of our nations, among us, between our brothers and sisters, is like trying to brush the teeth of a crocodile. They came, divided us, and they have taught us to keep each other from each other. Them, they're mingling with each other and making money and growing, but they have taught us to hate each other. But for us to really enjoy the true economic benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we need to behave like the Europeans and allow for the free movement of people and trade. Our development agencies, such as the African Union Development Agency and others, cannot really succeed when there are all these restrictions among ourselves. To this end, in our contribution to this continental aspiration, Kenya is committed to progressively, and we are moving very fast by the end of this year, to abolish visas to citizens from African Union member states to make it easier to invest and do business in Kenya and across the continent. We are going to open the borders of Kenya. We do not fear our fellow Africans. Come, travel to Kenya. Live, do business in Kenya. Trade, make money in Kenya. And we hope we'll get reciprocity with the rest of you. Let us open our continent so that we can make money and live together. Let us remove the shackles of colonialism that are still embedded in our heads and be able to move forward. Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, climate change continues to ravage lives and livelihoods of millions of people in Africa as a result of drought, floods, and erratic rainfall patterns, extreme heat conditions, among many other problems. This has significantly distorted our agricultural-based economies with devastating losses. It's flooding Malawi, it's dry in northern and other parts of this continent of ours. Previous global climate meetings have spent a lot of time in long conversations and stories without tangible commitments to reverse the adverse effects of climate change. Going forward, the future of this matter, Africa's voice must be consolidated. And this is very important. Africa's voice must be consolidated and amplified to underscore our special circumstances and call for a fair international financial system where we all participate so that we can discuss and be able to sort out proper funding so we can take care of the problems that have been caused by the ravages of climate change. We need to have a discussion with the international community about the debt. African nations are not saying they don't want to pay debt. If you borrow money, you pay back money. We want to pay. But we want to be able to pay in an international financial system that is fair to all of us. We want to be able to discuss moratoriums. We want to be able to discuss refinancing of our debts because of the problems that we faced. But we still want to pay our debts. But we need to sit on the table of these international financial systems as equals. Right now, we have shareholders and the rest of us, and they decide what they want. We are saying Africa's place has to be at the table, making decisions about our future, especially when it comes to the problems caused by climate change. Later on this year, we have COP28. And for us to be able to succeed, we will need a unified voice as Africans. President William Ruto of the Republic of Kenya, as his capacity as the chairperson of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, CAOSC, will be convening an African Climate Summit in Nairobi from the 4th to the 5th of September this year, a few months from today. Once again, on behalf of His Excellency the President, and on my own behalf, I extend an invitation to all of you to come and participate in this important and timely conversation. Please, come so that for the first time, we can have a tough, non-compromising, they may not like it, but they'll have to bear with us, position, so that when we go to COP28, Africa has a position that the rest of the world will listen to, so that we can be able to sort out the stories and get real revenue from what we need to achieve. So please, welcome to African Climate Summit meeting in Nairobi from the 4th, 5th, and 6th of September of this year. Mr. Chairperson, Kenya remains true to the fulfillment of our mandate of the African region as envisioned under the 2063 aspirations. We must remain faithful in the implementation of decisions that we make in our sessions. Let me say something that some of you may not like. African Union needs to be self-reliant. As long as the bulk of the AU funds come from outside the African continent, we somehow will find ourselves dancing to the music that is not of our own making. Therefore, we must address the issue of reforms that will enable us to fund our own programs. Funding that comes from our friends is good, but it needs to be funding that is in support of our programs and not our lifeline. Therefore, this calls for a critical look at the architecture of the African Union and the way we implement our decisions and the way we fund this continent. It's a discussion that we must have, and we must agree to ourselves that we need to take care of ourselves so that others can support us, but we are not being told to dance. My teacher used to say that at times when you're wearing somebody's suit, you know, and you start dancing, they start telling you slow down because you may ruin that suit. You know? We want to wear our own suits and dance the way we want, not to the tunes of other people. Mr. Chairperson, bearing in mind that there can be no development without peace, Kenya has remained committed to the Silencing of Guns initiative. We reaffirm that we must work tirelessly towards ending all civil wars, conflicts, gender-based violence, and the prevention of genocide. Kenya has actively participated in peace and mediation efforts at the regional level. Kenya is also spearheading the Nairobi process to bring an end to hostilities in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and have deployed our defense forces to this region as part of the peacekeeping and enforcement measures. Kenya is also currently chairing the IGAD Quartet group of countries for the resolution of the situation in the Republic of the Sudan. And we should all be proud of ourselves as Africans. We are taking charge and saying we need African solutions to African problems, and we are all leading from the front, all of us from the continent of Africa. As I conclude, Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the destiny of Africa lies in our hands to shape it to a place of prosperity, full of socio-economic opportunities and hope for our people. It is in our ability to transform Africa as a place to be and reverse the migration trajectory with our hands on the deck and commitment to walk the talk to our destination of the Africa we want, where no child shall sleep on an empty stomach. We want an Africa where guns shall be used to protect the freedom of our people, and our resources will provide a solid base for industrial revolution and create jobs for our people while providing the much needed global supply chain diversification option. This is our quote unquote winter. It was a bit cold, but I hope my words have warmed you up a little bit. And with those remarks, my friends, let me wish you all fruitful deliberations and enjoyable stay in Nairobi. Asante sana, thank you, merci beaucoup, shukran. God bless you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister, representative of the host country. It's really our great honor to be here today, and we highly appreciate the warm hospitality extended to the African Union, its member states, and the delegations here present in Kenya for this meeting. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor and pleasure to invite Her Excellency Dr. Monique Nzanza-Baganwa, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver her statement. Please.
Excellence,
Excellencies Dohir Durkamal, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the International Cooperation of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the Executive Council,
Albert Mutua, Cabinet Minister, and our dear host. Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres,
ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, members of the Executive Council,
Abdulaziz Katan, Mesdames, Messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, Secretary General of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ladies and gentlemen, heads of diplomatic missions, President of the Africa Development Bank, the Secretary Generals, the regional economic communities and mechanisms. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I have the honor to present to you the sincere apologies of His Excellency Mr. Musa Faki Mahamat, who at this moment is in Cairo, where he is taking part in the summit of the neighbors of Sudan who are undergoing a very serious crisis and undergoing for Africa as well. He will be with us present here tomorrow and will be very pleased to take part in our working sessions clearly. Excellencies, this 43rd session of the Executive Council offers to us an opportunity once again to meet and to exchange on the advancement of the programs of the Union and to evaluate the progress achieved in the decisions undertaken between the two sessions. Before going into the substantive matters, allow me to recognize and to pay tribute to President William Ruto, the Republic of Kenya President, and to the peoples of Kenya for all the efforts that have been deployed in the holding of this current session. I also have taken the amount of and particularly a difficult economic environment, and I wish to also pay tribute to the quality of hospitality and the conditions of work that are at our disposal. I am certain that these conditions will enable the successful completion of our discussions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, that the context in the international context in which that we find ourselves, and particularly the geopolitical changes that are the world is undergoing, have brought about great difficulties at the world level, and indeed slowing down on the economies of our countries in a very negative way. And it's against this backdrop that we have had the security state that has been brought about by conflicts, the rising of terrorism and violent terrorism. So here we have a continent that is presenting very tumultuous and which cannot be ready for the implementation of our development programs at its optimum. However, the member states, in a willingness and indeed and determination that we have to pay tribute to, or based on resilience and the belief on the future, have continued to work together with the different organs of the African Union, all the means in order to advance the 2063 agenda for the Africa we want. It is following this intervention on behalf of the chairperson that I will present to you the report of the Commission as well as the executive organs pertinent to the decisions taken by the Executive Council. The report of the PRC, the Permanent Representative Committee, that will be presented by the chair of the PRC, provides an overview of activities achieved between February and now. And for each of those matters, there is additional information on what has been achieved, on what needs to still be done, and then the challenges that have been faced in order to ensure the continuity of our démarche towards the final objective. I will also come back to certain of these items to further provide substantive details. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the year 2024 is on education, and given for the World Summit carried on the 77th session in September 2022, this theme focused on Africa has been labeled as follows: Africa educated, adapted to the 21st century, build systems, educative systems that are resilient to increased access to learning and inclusive learning, qualitative and all lifelong learning and pertinent for Africa. As you can realize it from this theme, this is a call to change, to radically change the paradigm, the educational paradigm that we have in Africa, and to ensure that we move away from the old paradigm, which was based on knowledge acquisition that had no link with the realities on the ground, to a better knowledge that would then respond to a logic that responds to the existential matters. Therefore, we need to ensure that our students have the taste of science, and to ensure that this can be undertaken in coming up with the best of services that they require. It is at this price, at this cost of the paradigm change, that Africa would then be able to reaffirm herself for her on what needs, particularly on the chess table globally. The challenge is huge, but we need to prepare ourselves to take up the challenge. Now, as regards the ACFTA, its implementation and its follow-up has been has been clearly indicated by the adoption of the protocol of the investment, as well as the competition and intellectual property aspects. The protocols that are in the process of finalization are on digital trade and involvement of women and youth in trade. The acceleration of the implementation of the ACFTA remains linked to the operationalization of the fund, the adjustment fund, and indeed the negotiations on the rules of origin, strengthening of the infrastructure through the approach of corridors, and the involvement of the private sector as well to ensure, and just among others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the process of reform has now entered into its finalization. However, the two aspects are on, first of all, the review of the mandate and the organs of institutions, and the second aspect is on the division of work between African Union, the regional economic communities, and the regional mechanisms, as well as member states. A joint retreat of PRC and the AU Commission was organized in Kigali from the 8th to the 9th of June 2023 in order to evaluate and assess the advancement of the two steps and measures mentioned. So the recommendations from this retreat are currently being finalized. So in its consolidation, this report will be the object of a presentation for the validation as well as the approval of the Executive Council before being presented to the Assembly of Heads of State and of Governments in February 2024. At the same time, the willingness of the Union to implement the recommendation of the earlier steps continue to be followed closely. I'd like to mention here the new structure of the African Union Commission which started by the establishment of a new African Union Commission from 10 to 8 members of the Commission, and this has been followed with managerial posts as well as critical posts in order to come to a conclusion. The existing staff members have undergone the SACA, which is the competencies evaluation, and the Commission has made recommendations which have been suspended for now. Unfortunately, we'd like to call upon and urge this august assembly to reiterate the commitment which is yours to ensure that this process is concluded successfully without any conditionalities by the end of this year, to enable the African Union Commission to come out of this precarious situation that will influence its output and performance. There has been advancement in the consolidation of the financing of the African Union Commission, as well as the improvement in the conception and the implementation of the budget, which is why the operational budget of the African Union is financed by 100% by member states, whereas the program budgets is financed at 12% by member states and 24% if we include the contribution, the increasing contribution of African institutions such as African Development Bank and Exim Bank. This is why it's important for us to express to them our gratitude for their contribution. In addition, the Peace Fund has received a contribution of about 350 million of US dollars, which is very close to the 400 million US dollars objective for 2025. In spite of this advancement, the durability and sustainability of the financing of the African Union remains a challenge, as the certain conditions, indeed 0.02% for other mechanisms in order to increase the revenue stream, have not been effectively implemented now for several years. So, faced with these treasury difficulties that member states are facing in light of the world economic reality, we need to ensure that these percentages are readjusted in order to enable us to look into obtaining a balance, a harmonious balance between the African Union and the objectives that have been accorded to the African Union Commission and the difficulties that member states are currently facing. Therefore, consequently, I would like to share our brother Minister, Dr. Mutua, on the financing of our union. You will review the draft budget, and you will ensure, you'll see how we can maintain this delicate balance between the implementation of our programs and our commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, the management of partners in the interdependence that today characterizes the relationship between member states individually or collectively at the multilateral level so clearly holds an important place in the promotion, international promotion for Africa. So we are here called upon to ensure that we are vigilant when it comes to our own interest, our freedom, our dignity, as well as our attachment to equality and mutual respect need to remain sacred as they are. This vigilance, which is very critical, is clearly translated in your decision that for the drafting of a clear document guiding on the partnerships that we forge, present ones and the ones to come. This document looks into bringing an added value in the management of partnership, and particularly when it comes to the role of actors, the involvement and participation of member states, the follow-up, as well as the implementation. Beyond this rationalization of the management of partners, it is essential to continue reflection on other geostrategic challenges that might be there, particularly in face of our own objectives inscribed in the Agenda 2063. As regards the Agenda 2063, the very first decade of the 2063 has been finalized, and the lessons learned have served to establish the second decenny through a very participative process for member states, for the actors, private sector, as well as the civil society. And so initially set up to be presented during the joint retreat that was mentioned earlier. The two reports on the first item, the first decade and then the second decade, will be presented to you during a special retreat of the members of the Executive Council that will be held in Kigali in October this year.
I'm convinced that this session will devote some more time in our continued progress towards a better future for our peoples and for our continent. I would like now to thank you for your very sincere attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Deputy Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Highlighting the important dual role of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa as the UN regional arm and as a key contributor to an empowered and transformed Africa. I now have the pleasure and honor to invite Mr. Antonio Pedro, Acting Executive Secretary of the UNECA, for his statement. Please.
Good morning. Her Excellency, Dr. Toidir Dokland, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Union of Comoros, His Excellency Dr. Alfred Mutwa, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, Her Excellency Dr. Monique, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to join you today at the 43rd Executive Council meeting of the African Union. This is a significant event in the calendar of the African Union, as it offers an opportunity to all of us to reflect, reset, recalibrate, and recommit to the goals of Africa's Agenda 2063. Amidst the setbacks and challenges brought on by a global polycrisis, Africans have come together to find solutions and innovative, driven by the determination to save lives and livelihoods. We must leverage that same spirit of solidarity, sense of urgency, and resilience to embrace the opportunities before us to deliver on the promises of this critical agenda. As you know, we are coming from several summits, the Paris Summit. I was privileged also to be in Comoros for a discussion on island states and climate action, as well as in the African Caucus meeting in Seoul, where we're discussing the reforms of the international global financial architecture. And Africa has come with very clear views about its role and position on all of those issues. For example, in Comoros, there was this very important message about the importance of making sure that island states, which are sea-locked, are sea-linked, and that all of our regional integration agenda and processes take that into consideration. Africa has already started leading the way for a renewed sense of common purpose, as reflected in the outcomes of the African Union Summit, Extraordinary Summit on Industrialization and Economic Diversification, held in November 2022 in Niamey, Niger, which articulated a clear pathway to accelerate Africa's structural transformation, with a potential to contribute an increased share of tradable goods in total exports, more productive and decent jobs, value addition, larger volumes of intra-African trade, greater product complementarity between African economies, and the emergence of strong and well-linked regional value chains, making nearshoring or Afrishoring possible, and breaking Africa's dependence on the export of raw materials. The African Continental Free Trade Area will serve as the catalyst for all of these step changes. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African continent has significant resources to power a green and sustainable industrialization and make the AfCFTA work for Africa. I make mine the words of the Cabinet Secretary of Kenya. For example, if we harness the full potential of the Congo River and build Inga 3 and 4, we will generate more than 70,000 megawatts, which will benefit about 15 African countries. These were the words of President Ramaphosa in the Paris Summit. These investments must therefore be prioritized, and African multilateral development banks should lead in crowding in investments to make this a reality. Money from our pension funds and diaspora could complement this effort, and special purpose vehicles should be curated accordingly. If realized, this could be a game changer for infrastructure development, being the largest single source of untapped renewable energy globally, with about double the capacity of China's Three Gorges Dam. It would also enable interconnectivity between African nations and power Africa's industrialization agenda. Second, with its battery minerals, the continent has a commanding opportunity to be a global leader in the electrification of transport systems and deployment of solar and wind energy, which are critical transitions to meet the world's net zero targets. A key priority for our region, as exemplified by the African Mining Vision, is to ensure that our mineral resources contribute to endogenous growth, hence the reference earlier to Afrishoring. As the world switches from coal and oil to wind turbines and solar panels, and trades internal combustion cars for electric vehicles, the demand for minerals such as cobalt, manganese, and platinum group minerals will increase as much as 4 to 5-fold. Africa is a key player of these minerals, accounting for over half of the global supply, and stands to gain immensely from this demand. To this end, the development of the transboundary DRC-Zambia Special Economic Zone for the development of a battery and electric vehicles value chain could be a game changer, potentiating Africa's participation in a global market worth $7.7 trillion by 2025 and $46 trillion by 2050. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the overall value of renewable energy market in 2020 was estimated at $881.7 billion and is projected to reach close to $2 trillion by 2030. With the demand for clean energy rising, it is time for Africa's renewable energy market to establish itself as a global player and attract increased global investments. Just a 10% share of this can easily add $200 billion to Africa's economy. Enabling infrastructure, strengthening productive capabilities, and expanding exports and intra-African trade through the AfCFTA must be accompanied by effective industrialization and trade policies to stimulate private sector investments. Third, Africa's huge solar and wind energy potential must be harnessed. The continent has about 60% of the global solar energy, including in countries such as Chad and Niger. If fully harnessed, solar energy could position these two countries to be major players in the livestock sector, especially in the meat and leather value chains across the Sahel region, generating jobs and income. Last, Africa's carbon market can offer an incredible opportunity to generate over $50 billion a year in revenues for the continent's climate finance needs. The core benefits to be reaped include the creation of new job opportunities, enhancing biodiversity and coastal ecosystems, contributing to environmental, social, and economic sustainability, while ensuring access to clean energy and water. The Moroni Declaration captures some of these elements. These are just few of the many other opportunities the continent has to power the journey to claim Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063 in Africa. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the entire UN family stand ready to provide its support to this strategic agenda and the leadership of the African Union Commission, and in close collaboration with the regional economic commissions and other stakeholders, through an integrated, coherent, and transformational ecosystem for change, being the reinvigorated AU-UN Regional Collaborative Platform, one of its key vehicles. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with the permission of His Excellency, Mr. Zahir Dhul Kamal, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Union of Commerce and the Chairperson of the Executive Council, اسمحوا لي أن أقدم.
Allow me to introduce now His Excellency Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Kattan, the advisor to the Royal Court, former Minister of State of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, one of the great diplomats in enhancing Africa-Arab cooperation.
Bismillah.
In the name of Allah, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you. It's an honor to convey to you at the outset the greetings of the custodian of the two holy mosques, His Highness King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, and the heir to the throne, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the head of the cabinet, may Allah bless them. They directed me to address you. This is within the vision of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to coordinate and communicate with you in order to achieve the common interests of the African countries through coordinating, exchanging viewpoints to serve our common interests. I'm looking forward to having this meeting as a base of more coordination and cooperation between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and all the African countries, the brotherly African countries in the African continent, that do have distinguished, fruitful, historic ties with the Kingdom, based on the collective action aiming at achieving joint goals. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in fact, pays great attention to the important role played by your august council to achieve the goals of the fruitful Saudi-African partnership, especially here in supporting the candidature of the Kingdom to host Expo 2030 in Riyadh, and to work together to render both summits, the African Saudi and Arab Saudi summits, to render them a success that will be hosted, God willing, by my country in this year 2023. In fact, the efforts here were crowned by all the African leaders who declared their support to the candidature of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to host the Expo and to host the two summits in November 2023. Our meeting here today, in fact, translates this support, and it reflects the African voting to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here together before the two summits, the first Saudi African Summit and the fifth Arab Africa Summit, that will be hosted by my country, God willing, during this year. This is to achieve or to enhance the partnership between the Kingdom and the countries of the African continent. We are now finalizing, in fact, the efforts in this regard, and we really appreciate your supportive stand to Riyadh to host Expo 2030. We would have never attained this without the unification of efforts and the unification of the African voices in support of the candidature of my country to host this global event. This will be a very important achievement to realize the goals and development that we are really looking forward to through mega projects that we do work on implementing them together based on developmental plans that will be talked about in Expo 2030 in Riyadh. And here I would like to welcome the new African countries' representatives in the International Bureau of Expositions. We will hold more events that's to strengthen developmental ties that we worked on since 1975 as partners through having projects from the Developmental Saudi Fund and other finance institutions in the Kingdom. We hope during the coming period to work with all the countries of the African continent to achieve the developmental goals based on the decision of the UN Resolution 1/60 for 2005. That's to further bolster development and investment in the African continent. To achieve this, the Kingdom was the first country that supported Africa's Agenda 2063 through mega developmental projects that were implemented in the African continent that we call the continent of hope. That was in all fields. This is a reflection of the close coordination and convergence between both visions, Saudi Vision 2030 and Africa's Vision on Agenda 2063. Your Excellencies, here I refer to the declaration of His Highness Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the head of the cabinet, dated 29 October 2021, concerning the Kingdom's official application to host International Expo 2030, which is an extraordinary international platform. All countries meet together to discover new innovation and technologies related to the global development for sustainability and economy. The Kingdom's hosting Expo 23 is a true reflection of the Kingdom's Vision 2030. It will also be in concurrent with the crowning of its efforts to achieve its agenda, and also the Africa's Agenda 2063. We will also celebrate 100 years of IBE, the International Bureau of Expositions, of its establishment, and here comes the importance of our cooperation to achieve this new vision through this very important global event that we're looking forward to the participation of the whole world. The next voting in the UN General Assembly for the IBE in Paris, November 2023, will be the first step towards achieving our goals and the aspirations of our peoples. This is to enhance development and welfare. The African supportive voice to the Kingdom will be a main pillar and the cornerstone to achieve a qualitative leap in our real developmental efforts, Saudi African efforts. The whole world will bear witness to the outcomes of this exemplary partnership in 2023. It's my pleasure to express my government's appreciation to all leaders of the African countries for the constant support to the Kingdom's candidature to host Expo 2030 in Riyadh. I hope to have all those votes, the African voices, to be one voice supporting the Kingdom's candidature to host the Expo 2030. Looking forward to having your approval for a paragraph in your final communique related to the Kingdom's candidature to host Expo 2030. In conclusion, I would like to express my appreciation for His Excellency the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Kenya for hosting us, and also the Foreign Minister of Comoros, Union of Comoros, and also Her Excellency the DCP for inviting me to be here to address you. Thank you so much. Peace be upon you.
شكرا معالي المستشار على مشاركتكم الكريمة وكلمتكم الضافية.
Thank you for your very kind statement.
Request His Excellency Mr. Zahir Dhul Kamal, Minister of
السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Excellence.
Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kenya, Madam Deputy Chairperson representing Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Ministers and dear colleagues, Your Excellency, Advisor, former Ambassador the Royal Court of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, commissioners, ambassadors, heads of organ, regional economic communities, ladies and gentlemen. From the outset, on your behalf and on my own behalf, I want to express our deep gratitude through Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua to the government and the people of the Republic of Kenya for the generous hospitality that they have accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. May I also pay a deserved tribute to my predecessor, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Senegal, Madame Aïssata Tall, the past chairperson of our Executive Council, for the quality of her leadership in steering the deliberations of our last meeting. Finally, I want to welcome our friend, the former Minister an advisor to the Royal Court of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who expressed the wish to address our August meeting today. This 43rd Ordinary Session of the Executive Council is taking place at a time and within the special context of the international scene, marked by conflicts and various crises. Our continent has not been spared. It has suffered head-on the various upheavals and deflagrations which have worsened the already fragile situation. These multi-pronged political, economic, climate crises have slowed down our collective stimulus towards Africa that we want at the heart, which is at the heart of Agenda 2063. Since our last ordinary summit last February, several initiatives have been taken by the current chairman in cooperation with the African Union Commission to try to find a lasting compromise on with the different protagonists to the conflicts that is tearing apart our continent. The war in the Sudan, the conflict in Eastern DRC, the transition process in Mali and Burkina Faso and Guinea, the war, Russia and Ukraine, which is weighing heavily and negatively on the agricultural production of Africa. And these are so many concerns which in fact remain at the very heart of our political and diplomatic program. This commitment and mobilization for peace here as well as elsewhere have not, in fact, taken away our focus from the objectives of development. In fact, in Hiroshima, at the meeting of the G7, where we exchanged fruitful views with the richest countries of the world on the issues of debt, energy, environment, and these have given us some hope for promising prospects for our continent. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our session of the Council at this time is called upon to reflect on issues that are also important, and among them we can mention the speeding up of the implementation of the AFCFTA, the theme of the year 2023, the adoption of the budget 2024, the strategy and the framework orientation for partnerships, the institutional reform of an organization, the theme of 2024. With regard to the AFCFTA, we can see some progress. I think some of the countries have not ratified and deposited their instruments of ratification of the AFCFTA in order to join these dynamics of the continent. And early on, we have been shown the importance, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs has stated. In fact, the AFCFTA is an important step towards economic integration of Africa as recommended by the Abuja Treaty in 1991 and repeated in Agenda 2063. However, there is still a long way to go. in order to attain the objective and to integrate the continent and to have interconnectivity. The free movement of persons in the continental space could stimulate intra-African trade, till today remains a pious wish. Many countries have not so far signed this protocol related to the free movement. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I think for the first time in the history of organization, to choose education as the theme of the year 2024 is in fact a very pertinent choice, looking at the various gaps that we need to fill in order to attain Objective 4 of our development goals. In fact, I want to commend the farsightedness of Chairperson Moussa Faki, who has made that proposal. The delay that we are experiencing on our continent as regards education, and you look at the state of poverty and destitution on the continent, when you look at the report, when then 9 children out of 10 in the sub-Saharan Africa are unable even at the age of 10 years to read or to understand a simple text in their own language of teaching. In fact, it has been established that half of the children across the world, in fact, who are not educated or they are Africans, that is 30 million children who do not go to school. At this time, digitalization and artificial intelligence, these statistics constitute a challenge to our continent. It is high time that the African state devote a consistent budget to education and the necessary means if we want to, in fact, to build that Africa for our future generations. Furthermore, it is important that we look at this issue, and the committee in charge of the budgetary matters and financial and administrative matters should, in fact, look into this matter. The particularity of our budget of this year is to reconcile the budgetary constraints of our member states and the will to reduce our dependence on our partners. We have to take into account the ongoing reforms in order to rationalize the expenses of our organization. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like at the end of my statement to thank the Permanent Representatives Committee for having an in-depth and careful consideration of the reports that have been submitted to it, as well as the various technical subcommittees which have shown their commitment and making the necessary efforts in preparing these reports. I rely on the contribution of each and every one, dear colleagues, in order to have fruitful deliberations and thus to make this fifth coordination meeting a success. I thank you for your kind attention, and I declare open our session.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I shall now invite the following categories of delegates to proceed for a group photo in front of the stairs, which is found just right as we exit from the conference hall. As per usual practice, I call upon our honorable ministers, heads of delegation, senior leadership of the Commission, heads of African Union organs, heads of regional economic communities, to proceed for the official photo of the 43rd Executive Council as guided by our protocol and security teams. I will also humbly request from the list of our esteemed delegates to remain seated for a few minutes while our honorable ministers and senior officials to proceed to the group photo. Following the family photo and the coffee break, the Executive Council will resume in closed session. And moving forward, His Excellency, the Chairperson of the Executive Council, will guide the rest of the session. I thank you all. Thank you very much.
Manufacturing-based industrialization, promotion of culture, arts and sports, peace and security. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Every African has a right to proper health care, good food and nutrition, and good quality of life. African countries, in the implementation of their national priorities under Agenda 2063, have made commitments to eradicate poverty in our generation, build inclusive and sustainable economies with shared prosperity for all, through social and economic transformation by focusing on the following areas: sustainable and inclusive economic growth that reduces poverty and leads to increased income levels. Equality and decent jobs. Value addition in agricultural products and growth of agro-business and industries. Human capital development. Skills revolution in science, technology and innovation. Gender development, youth empowerment and employment generation for youth and women. Social security and protection for all people and infrastructural development. Good governance supported by capable institutions. Manufacturing-based industrialization. Promotion of culture, arts and sports. Peace and security. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Every African has a right to proper health care, good food and nutrition, and good quality of life. African countries, in the implementation of their national priorities under Agenda 2063, have made commitments to eradicate poverty in our generation, build inclusive and sustainable economies with shared prosperity for all, through social and economic transformation by focusing on the following areas: sustainable and inclusive economic growth that reduces poverty and leads to increased income levels. Equality and decent jobs. Value addition in agricultural products and growth of agro-business and industries.
Delegates, ladies and gentlemen.
Human capital
Over the
development.
past days, there has been a clarion
skills
call from cities
revolution
and
in
local
science,
governments
technology
facing
and
crippling
innovation.
crises and risks on
Gender
global
development,
scale,
youth
including a rising
empowerment
cost of
and
living,
employment
energy
generation
and
for
food
youth
crisis,
and women.
rising inflation.
Social security and protection for all people and infrastructural development. Good governance supported by capable institutions. Manufacturing-based industrialization. Promotion of culture, arts and sports. Peace and security. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen.
Every
Over the past
African
days,
has a right
there's been
to
a clarion
proper
call from
healthcare,
cities and
good
local
food
governments
and nutrition,
facing
and
crippling
good
crises
quality of life.
and risks on global
African
scale,
countries, in the
including a
implementation
rising
of their
cost of
national
living,
priorities
energy
under
and food
Agenda
crisis, and
2063,
rising inflation.
have made
These
commitments
crises
to
are further
eradicate
amplified
poverty in our
by the
generation,
persistent health
build
and economic
inclusive
threat of
and sustainable
COVID-19,
economies with shared
a war in Europe
prosperity
and
for
sanctions
all,
with implications
through
on an
social
integrated
and
global
economic
economy,
transformation
and an
by
escalating
focusing on the
technological
following
power race.
areas:
Implications and knock-on
inclusive
effects to our
economic
urban
growth
agenda
that
now and in the
reduces
future
poverty
will
and
be
leads to
profound and
increased
complex.
income levels.
As a global community,
Equality and
are we
decent
prepared
jobs.
for the future of our urban
Value
agenda?
addition in agricultural
Looking ahead,
products and growth of agro-business and industries. Human capital development. Skills revolution in science, technology and innovation. Gender development, youth empowerment and employment generation for youth and women. Social security and protection for all people and infrastructural development. Good governance supported by capable institutions. Manufacturing-based industrialization. Promotion of culture, arts and sports. Peace and security. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063. Every African has a right to proper health care, good food and nutrition.
Zola, do you ever think
quality
about
of
what
life.
Africa would look
African
like
countries
in the
in the
next 50
implementation of their
or
national
100
priorities
years?
under
Africa?
Agenda
What's there to think about
2063
Africa?
have made
I mean,
commitments
I'm here to figure out my
eradicate
life,
poverty in
not to
our
talk of
generation, build
almighty
inclusive
Africa.
and sustainable
Anyway, why do
economies
you
with
ask?
shared prosperity for
Well,
all
given
through
the situation
social
of Africa in
and
the
economic
past,
transformation
and
by
I wonder if
focusing on
things
the
would
following
get better by
areas.
then.
Sustainable
I read
and
in the news that
inclusive
in
economic
some parts of
growth
Africa,
that reduces
people don't
poverty
even have
and
access
leads